make the fave button do something. So that has a class of fave. So when we first create the list item, down here in render list item, we mess with the remove button, but we're not doing anything yet with the other. So let's go ahead and do something. This time button dot fave. And whoops, we don't want to call remove flick. I'll call fave flick. Sure, why not? I'll go ahead and put that underneath remove flick. Go ahead and get my event in there. And since we did copy and paste, we are already binding this, so we're not going to have that issue. So what should we do to it? Well, we need the li again, so we can do it this way. Use closest. Event target closest flick. To do it. And in order to make the change stick, we need to actually change that student object, right? Because that's what gets synced to local storage. How did you guys address this? Those of you who did it. Yeah. Made another part of the object. But how did you set it? I mean, where? Which method did you put that in? Did you put it in here? Or did you put it back in the... Like here I don't have the student object, right? It's... Make... Oh, I see. Okay. Well, here's... what I really wish I could do it inside fave flick, because that's the method that's responsible for doing it. So you could grab it out of the array if you've already pushed it to the array. There is another way that I'm going to choose to do it, using another feature of bind. So bind will change the binding of this, but as we've discovered, you can't pass arguments at that time, right? So if it has arguments, you need to do something else, like use an arrow function. But if you add additional arguments to bind, then whatever you put there will also be sent as an argument to that method whenever it is called. So I could say this comma, where am I? Render list item. Do I not even have the student in here, or the flick in here? I don't, do I? Where do I call that? Add flick. Wait, what was that I was messing with? Render list item. That's not what I meant. I meant inside add flick. When we call render list item, I could pass in the flick at that time because I have it, right? So if I pass in the flick to the render list item, I did. There we go. Yes, the flick is here. So I want to pass that flick as an argument to fave as well. So if I just put this comma flick, that should pass that as an argument. Now what arguments, other arguments is flick gonna or is fave flick gonna get? The event, right? Because it is an event listener. So the question is, what order is that going to come in? So we could go to faveflick and do a console log arguments. So we've talked about the fact that JavaScript does not enforce the number of arguments. And you can get to the arguments whether you name them or not. So even though we've only named one of them here, you can get to all of them through this arguments array, which isn't actually an array, but it's an array-like thing. So let's have a look at that. Refresh. Let's fave one. And I see 2 arguments. The first one is an object. The second one is a mouse event. And that object is, in fact, the flick. So we just know that the object will be passed in before the event. So the event will be the last argument that it passes in. So if you add additional arguments this way, they will come before the event. So we will change the list here to flick, comma, event. Now it looked like fave false was already in there. Fave false ID for another 1999. Did I do that at some point? How did that get in there? Because it came out of local storage when I was running one of yours. That's why. So let's just clear that out. Now I've got nothing. Let's add a couple. Let's try faving one of them. So this time I'm going to, whenever I add one, I'm back up in add flick. Is add flick where it happens? It's add flick via form. I put an ID, a name, and I will put fave false by default. Again, leaving my trailing comma. And then when I do fave flick, I will be sure to say flick.fave equals true. So we grabbed the list item because we wanted to change its style. So that's the other thing we have to do here. Yeah.
Yeah, can I see your the query selector for the fave?
It is just button.fave. So we could actually hard code some styles in here and like set the background color or something like that. What I would prefer to do is to actually create a new CSS rule. With a class of .fave. I will change the background color this lovely shade and the border color to a slightly lighter version of the same hue. This way I can add as many rules as I want, as many properties as I want to this rule, and it will be without changing any JavaScript instead of changing line by line. Yeah.
What class did you name
I think that. So we could say .flick.fave. Good point. Unless we actually want the fave button to look that way. We'll see how it looks. The border might be a problem. Or it might not. Let's leave that out for now and see how that looks. Yeah, I'm okay with that color actually on the button. I think. as long as it doesn't overwhelm it once we actually do it. So now in faveflick, I will say list item dot class list add. We used remove once upon a time. Just add fave to that. Let's refresh. Let's fave one. And there we go. Yeah, it kind of disappears in there. So I will make that rule specifically. Anything with a class of flick that also has a class of fave. Whee. Now, not there when I refresh. Why? That's a change. So we have to update local storage. So we need to call this.save at the end. Anytime we change our array of things, we need to save to local storage again. Refresh now, try faving one, refresh the page, and it went away still. Did I refresh this before I did that? I did. So let's see what's up. Okay, it has fave is true. So we're not, if it's true, we're not adding that class back, right? So the data persisted, but we didn't do anything about that when we added it. So somebody said something about load. So when we load, we just loop through them all and add them again. And that's all I want to do in load. We could look at that method that does the adding. So here that is, add flick. And see if we can influence the class at that time. So that creates the list item with render list item. So render list item down here. That's the point at which we need to make that decision. Should that class be on here or not? So we add the flick name to the text area, or the text content of the span. And if flick.fave item.classList add fave. Make sense? So at the time of creation, when we first add the li to the page, we want to first check if it's faved, and if it is, we'll add that class right off the bat. Does it make sense why I put it here instead of one of those other methods? It's really when building the list item itself that we need to decide to add that class. And it works. Now it doesn't toggle at this point. It doesn't remove it. It only adds it. We never set it back to false. Several of you, however, did make it toggle. So what can we do? Down in fave. Say again? Is that something that's on class list? Yeah. Class list has a toggle method. So then, what about setting the value of this? Okay. So we could toggle the class and then set it to the opposite of what it is now. So class list toggle, set fave to the opposite of its current value. Make sense? That'll do. Anybody do it a different way? Did you, or are you just smiling because you're happy? Okay. I think that's all right too. Do the add and remove based on that. It's a little more explicit. If you were to basically set it, you could run this first and then add or remove based on the new value of that. I don't think it is very likely to cause a problem though this way. I think this is probably safe. But the other, I do not have a problem with the other way at all.
The only potential downside of that way is they're not necessarily tied together.
Right.
It's possible to get out of sync.
Yeah.
Property different.
It isn't terribly likely, but it is possible. So if we go ahead and explicitly set it to the opposite of what it is now, dang you. And then instead of toggling this, we could explicitly check if flick.fave, add it. Else, remove it. And by tying it to the actual value of flick.fave, if for some reason they do get out of sync by whatever means, the next time you click it, they will get back in sync. Otherwise, once they're off, they'll be off forever because they'll just both keep toggling. So it is actually my preferred solution. Okay. Now, a lot of you had them fading in nice and smoothly. So that's a CSS transition. So what we could do on anything with a class of flick, if we just add this transition property, I'll set it to a full second just so it's super obvious what's happening. Now it fades out really slowly and turns on really slowly. I want it to be close to instantaneous. I want it to feel instantaneous and just look slightly better. So I'm going to lower that to 0.25. It still happens really fast, but it's smooth looking. So by putting this transition value on here, if at any point we change the values in CSS by adding another class or manually setting them or whatever, it will basically animate those over a course of a quarter second. So pretty easy way just to get a very nice little effect. Implement fave or add flicks to favorites. Sure. Why not?